Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Full Experience. This is the Carrier Update brought to you by Powerfleet, and I'm here with the one and only Zach Strickland. Zach, good morning.
Oh man, if we could only just offer the full experience every single time. So the freight market giving you the full experience right now. Sort of. It's been in a pretty rapid decline over the last several weeks, but we're appearing to stall out at the moment. If you look at the tender rejection index, I've changed up the chart a little bit over on that side of the wall there, where you can see we're actually in kind of a hovering. Like we fell rapidly through like 18, 17, 16%, and now we're like right above 16%, and that's still relatively tight. This is a peak season type value pre-pandemic and the before times, but it's going to feel a lot looser than it has been because we've been above 20% for so long. So tender rejection rates right about where they were. It's an interesting little intersection point over there on the that side of the wall where you see that the March, right as the pandemic was starting 2 years ago, in that green line, we were right about the same value at this time, on our way up to about 25% in the tender rejection index before it fell rapidly. And of course, you would not want to apply that amount of seasonality to this index right now, because it simply isn't something that, we're not in that same period of time, thank God, again. But it is interesting to see, because normally March, you do see these little increasing rejection rates this time of year, normally leading into the end of the month, because it's the end of the quarter. We tend to see volumes increase as well. Not really happening right now, though.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is what we typically see during this time of the year. I know during the warmer months kind of start to lead into produce season a little bit more. We're not seeing some of that activity, like you said, at the end of the quarter. Are you maybe anticipating, hey, expect the unexpected and expect the exact opposite, especially when going into produce season this year?
Yeah. I mean, reefer rejection rates falling. They're a big part of the reason that this rejection rate is falling so rapidly, is because reefer rejection rates, which were bouncing between 35 and 40%, now in the 20s, in the upper 20s, and they continue to fall pretty rapidly. Now, one of the reasons that this is happening is, of course, increasing contract rates. They are still increasing, and a lot of implementations go through at the end of February, end of March. So that's probably a reason we're seeing one of these accelerations, because we've seen significant, you're talking about 30% rate increases year over year when you look at the entire spectrum of how, people have been taking rate increases throughout this period of time a lot more quickly than they normally do. And now you're getting into the bulk of those, especially people that were still sitting on those annual rate increases going into place right now. It's probably cleaning out a lot of the system, which is why this thing is accelerating. Now, if we look at the next chart, outbound tender volume index, though, we can see that demand does have something to do with it. Now, again, this is total tenders, but we are seeing, you can kind of assume some level of degrading demand side environment right now. We talked about it on Freightonomics last week with Dr. Zach Rogers. Inventory level growth last month was as fast as it's ever been. They finally, it looks like, are gaining traction in that inventory situation, especially on the upstream, guys. So certainly go check that interview out with Zach Rogers, because there's a lot of interesting tidbits there. So that probably has something to do with this. It doesn't mean that demand is going away entirely. It just means that maybe at this point, some of those warehouses are starting to fill up, and your shippers may be taking a breather on how to move some of this stuff around.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge issue, especially as we see, there's a stoppage in China right now, of course, for production, but as we see some of that get worked through, what's going to happen with potentially that next flood of inventories and goods as it comes into the country? Are we going to start to see another, I'm going to quote Steve Ferreira here, Containergeddon happen, maybe in a smaller scale or larger scale, but where that management and inventory comes into play is really going to be fascinating here.
Yeah, we're looking at, when we look at the maritime side of things, it's as strong as it's ever been. Outside of probably this time last year when we saw that flood of stuff coming into the country, shippers, of course, trying to get that capacity coming from China, and inventory levels were relatively low at that point in time. Now they're not. They're starting to get that traction back. So not necessarily all the way up, but warehouse capacity at a premium. Inventory costs now cost you a lot more than they did this time last year. So There may be some reorganization going on right now, especially on the shipping side, because inventory managers definitely have their jobs cut out for them, which may mean that there's going to be less surface transportation, at least a little incrementally here for a period of time.
Got it, Zach. Thank you so much for this update. We'll check in with you again right now. We're going to toss it back over to Kaylee Nixon and Michael Vincent.